The training ground stretched across the metal floor like a battlefield frozen in time. Sweat and blood had stained the silver surface over countless cycles, creating dark patterns that told stories of pain and progress. Marcus Chen wiped his nose with the back of his hand, tasting copper as he struggled to his feet. The Catherian instructor, Veltar, towered over him with all four arms crossed. His chitinous exterior gleamed under the harsh white lights, and his compound eyes reflected Marcus's pathetic form in 1,000 tiny fragments. The alien's mandibles clicked together in what Marcus had learned was amusement. Again, human whelp. Veltar's voice buzzed through the translator device strapped to his throat. Your species claims to be warriors, yet you fall like a leaf in solar wind. Marcus spat blood onto the floor and raised his fists. At 17 standard years, he was one of the youngest humans in the Galactic Military Academy. Most of his classmates were older, stronger, and definitely more experienced. But Marcus had something they didn't: a burning need to prove himself worthy of his family name. The other cadets formed a loose circle around the sparring area. There were Zolonians with their scaled skin and forked tongues, Borvac twins who shared thoughts through their linked neural implants, and even a few rare ethereal beings whose translucent bodies seemed to phase in and out of reality. Among them stood 12 other humans, all watching Marcus get beaten again. The human is weak, one of the Zolonians hissed to his companion. Perhaps their species should stick to farming and trade. Marcus's jaw tightened. He'd heard variations of this insult for 3 months since arriving at the academy. Humans were the newest members of the Galactic Federation. Having only made contact 15 years ago, most species saw them as primitive, soft creatures from a backwater planet. Veltar circled Marcus like a predator studying wounded prey. The Catherian moved with fluid grace despite his massive frame. His species had been warriors for over 1,000 years, serving as elite trainers for the Emperor's military forces. They were known throughout the galaxy for their combat prowess and merciless training methods. Your stance is pathetic, Veltar observed, his upper arms gesturing dismissively while his lower arms remained ready to strike. Your footwork belongs in a nursery, and your strikes, they are like gentle rain on armor plating. Marcus lunged forward, throwing a combination of punches he'd practiced countless hours in his quarters. Veltar blocked each strike effortlessly with his lower arms, while his upper arms remained crossed. The alien's movements were economical, precise, almost bored. Faster, Veltar demanded, his mandibles clicking faster. The enemy will not wait for you to remember your training. Marcus increased his pace, sweat streaming down his face as he threw punch after punch. His knuckles were already raw from previous training sessions, and his shoulders burned with exhaustion. Still, he kept attacking, driven by something deeper than pride. Veltar's upper right arm shot out without warning, catching Marcus in the solar plexus. The human doubled over, gasping for air that seemed to have abandoned his lungs. As he struggled to breathe, the alien's lower left arm swept his legs, sending him crashing to the metal floor once again. Pathetic, Veltar announced to the assembled cadets. This creature believes it can serve alongside true warriors. It cannot even stand against basic instruction. Marcus pushed himself up on trembling arms, his vision blurry with sweat and tears of frustration. The other cadets were laughing now. Not just the aliens, but some of the humans too. The sound cut deeper than any physical blow. My grandfather would have put you on your back in seconds, Marcus said, the words coming out before he could stop them. The laughter died instantly. Veltar's compound eyes fixed on Marcus with sudden intensity, and the instructor's mandibles stopped clicking. The silence stretched across the training ground like a held breath. What did you say, human? Veltar's voice had dropped to a dangerous whisper. Marcus knew he should apologize, should back down and accept his place at the bottom of the hierarchy. But something in him refused to bend. I said my grandfather would have beaten you. Easily. One of the Zolonian cadets hissed in shock. The Borvac twins' eyes went wide, and even the ethereal beings seemed to solidify with attention. No one spoke to a Catherian instructor like this, especially not a human. Veltar's upper arm slowly uncrossed as he took a step closer to Marcus. Your grandfather was a farmer, perhaps? A merchant? What makes you think some primitive human could challenge a Catherian warrior? Because, Marcus said, climbing to his feet despite his shaking legs, he trained the Emperor's personal guard before you were even hatched. The statement hit the training ground like an explosion. Several cadets gasped, others stepped back involuntarily, and the Borvac twins actually broke their mental link in shock. Veltar's entire body went rigid, his chitinous plates shifting with tension. Impossible, the instructor breathed. The Emperor's personal guard has been trained by Catherians for 8 centuries. No human has ever been permitted near the Imperial Palace, let alone trained his sacred warriors. Marcus wiped blood from his split lip and met Veltar's gaze directly. My grandfather's name was Chen Wei Lin. Look it up. For a moment, the only sound in the training hall was the hum of air recyclers and the distant thrum of the station's engines. Veltar stared at Marcus with an expression that might have been confusion, anger, or something else entirely. Then the instructor's upper right arm moved faster than Marcus could track. The blow caught him across the face with enough force to spin him halfway around before he hit the floor. Stars exploded behind his eyes, and the taste of blood filled his mouth completely. Liar! Veltar snarled, all pretense of control abandoned. You dare invoke sacred names to cover your weakness? You dishonor your species and your family with such fabrications. Marcus tried to push himself up, but his arms wouldn't cooperate. The side of his face felt like it was on fire, and something warm was running down his neck. Through the ringing in his ears, he could hear cadets shouting, though whether in support or condemnation, he couldn't tell. That's enough. The voice cut through the chaos with absolute authority. Marcus managed to turn his head toward the training ground entrance, where a figure stood silhouetted against the corridor lighting. Admiral Sarah Chen stepped into the training area with measured steps, her human military uniform crisp and pristine despite the long journey from Earth. Her dark hair was pulled back in a regulation bun, and her brown eyes, so similar to Marcus's own, surveyed the scene with cold calculation. Every cadet in the room snapped to attention, regardless of species. Admiral Chen was known throughout the galaxy, one of only 3 humans to achieve flag rank in the galactic military. Her reputation for strategic brilliance was matched only by her reputation for protecting her people. Instructor Veltar, she said, her voice carrying easily across the silent training ground. I believe you've just struck my nephew. Veltar's mandibles clicked nervously as he straightened to his full impressive height. Admiral Chen. I was not aware you were visiting the academy. Clearly, Sarah replied, moving to kneel beside Marcus. She examined his injured face with gentle fingers, her expression unreadable. Can you sit up? Marcus nodded weakly and accepted his aunt's help in getting upright. The room spun slightly, but he managed to stay conscious. Sarah's presence felt like a shield around him, and he could see the other cadets watching with renewed interest. The human made false claims, Veltar said, his voice defensive. He stated that his grandfather trained the Emperor's guard. Such lies cannot be tolerated in warriors. Sarah helped Marcus to his feet before turning to face the Catherian instructor. When she spoke, her voice carried a note that made several cadets step back involuntarily. False claims? She repeated. Instructor, Veltar. How long have you been training cadets at this academy? 12 cycles, Admiral. My record is exemplary. I'm sure it is. Tell me, in those 12 cycles, have you bothered to research the backgrounds of your human students? Veltar's compound eyes shifted uncomfortably. Human records are limited. Your species only joined the Federation recently. Sarah smiled, and something about that expression made the alien instructor take an unconscious step backward. Limited. Yes, I suppose that's one way to describe our policy of sharing information with new allies. She activated a holographic display from her wrist communicator, and a 3-dimensional image appeared in the center of the training ground. It showed an elderly human man in an elaborate uniform Marcus had never seen before, standing beside a figure that made every non-human in the room freeze. The Emperor of the Galactic Federation was unmistakable. His golden skin seemed to glow with inner light, and his 4 wings were spread wide in a display of majesty. He was presenting something to the elderly human, a medal or decoration that sparkled with precious metals. That photograph? Sarah said conversationally, was taken 32 years ago during the celebration of imperial victory. The human being honored is General Chen Wei-Lin, my father and Marcus's grandfather. The medal he's receiving is the Star of Ultimate Service, awarded to only 17 beings in the Federation's history. The training ground was so quiet that Marcus could hear his own heartbeat thundering in his ears. Veltar stared at the hologram as if it might attack him, his chitinous plates rattling slightly. General Chen, Sarah continued, spent 15 years as the personal combat instructor to the Emperor's Guard. He was recruited after single-handedly defeating a Catherian battle champion who had been terrorizing frontier worlds. The Emperor was so impressed that he personally requested Chen's service. She gestured, and the hologram changed to show the same elderly man in training gear, sparring with creatures that looked suspiciously similar to Veltar. The human moved with fluid precision, easily handling multiple opponents at once. During his tenure, Sarah said, General Chen trained over 300 Imperial Guardsmen. His techniques became standard doctrine, and his training methods are still used today. Several of his students went on to become sector commanders. Marcus stared at the hologram, seeing his grandfather's face clearly for the first time in years. He had dim memories of the old man teaching him basic self-defense when he was very young, but he'd never imagined anything like this. The Emperor granted General Chen the title of Honorary Marshal of the Imperial Forces upon his retirement, Sarah said. He was one of only 5 non-Imperials ever to receive such recognition. Veltar's mandibles had stopped clicking entirely. The instructor seemed frozen, his compound eyes reflecting the holographic images in thousands of fragments. So you see, Sarah said, deactivating the display, when my nephew claims his grandfather trained the Emperor's soldiers, he's not boasting. He's stating a simple fact. The silence stretched until one of the Zilonian cadets whispered something to his companion in their native language. The words were too quiet to understand, but the tone conveyed awe and perhaps fear. Now, Sarah said, her voice returning to its conversational tone, I believe there's been a misunderstanding here. My nephew was sharing his family history, and you responded with violence. In most civilized societies, that would be considered assault. Veltar's entire body began to tremble. Striking a cadet without just cause was a serious offense, but striking the grandchild of an imperial marshal could end his career entirely. Admiral, he began. I did not know. Of course you didn't know, Sarah interrupted. Because you didn't bother to learn. You assumed that because Marcus is young and human, his claims must be false. You let prejudice override professionalism. Marcus watched as his aunt circled the much larger alien, her movements eerily similar to the old man in the hologram. There was something predatory in her step, something that reminded him of stories his grandfather used to tell about hunting dangerous prey. However, Sarah said, I'm willing to overlook this incident under one condition. Veltar's relief was visible in the way his chitinous plates stopped rattling. What condition, Admiral? You will personally ensure that Marcus receives proper training. No more humiliation exercises, no more treating him like a failure. You will help him reach his potential. Or you will answer to me personally. The threat in her voice was unmistakable. Every being in the training ground understood that Admiral Sarah Chen was not someone to cross. And if Marcus continues to struggle with the standard curriculum, she added, you will contact me immediately. I'll be happy to provide additional training methods that my father developed. Marcus felt a surge of conflicting emotions. Pride at learning about his grandfather's legacy warred with embarrassment at needing his aunt's protection. But as he looked around at the other cadets' faces, he saw something new in their expressions. The mockery was gone, replaced by curiosity, and perhaps even respect. Yes, Admiral, Veltar said, his voice barely audible. I understand completely. Sarah nodded once, then turned back to Marcus. Are you all right? Do you need medical attention? I'm fine, Marcus said, though his face still throbbed from the blow. Thank you. Family takes care of family, she replied, checking his pupils for signs of concussion. Your grandfather would be proud of you for standing up for yourself. He always said courage was more important than strength. She stood and addressed the assembled cadets. I hope this serves as a lesson to all of you. Never underestimate someone based on their appearance, age, or species. The galaxy is full of surprises, and assumptions can be deadly in combat. As the cadets began to disperse, Sarah placed a hand on Marcus's shoulder. "Walk with me," she said quietly. They left the training ground together, moving through corridors filled with bustling academy life. Students from dozens of species hurried between classes, their voices creating a babble of languages and sounds. "Your grandfather never liked to talk about his service," Sarah said as they walked. "He thought it would put too much pressure on the family. But maybe it's time you knew the full story." Marcus nodded, still processing everything he'd learned. "Why didn't anyone tell me before?" "Because Wei Lin made us promise not to. He wanted you to find your own path, not feel obligated to live up to his legacy." Sarah paused at a viewport showing the stars beyond the academy station. "But circumstances have changed. You're going to face challenges here that require you to understand who you come from." "What kind of challenges?" Sarah's reflection in the viewport smiled grimly. "The kind that test more than your ability to throw a punch. Your grandfather's reputation opens doors, Marcus, but it also makes enemies. There are beings in this galaxy who still resent humanity's rapid rise in the Federation." She turned to face him directly. "Some will try to use you to prove that humans don't deserve the respect your grandfather earned. Others will expect you to be a perfect copy of him. Neither path will be easy." Marcus touched his swollen face, remembering the shock in Veltar's eyes when the truth was revealed. "What am I supposed to do?" "Learn," Sarah said simply. "Train harder than anyone else. Study not just combat, but history, politics, and alien cultures. Your grandfather succeeded because he understood his enemies as well as he understood himself." She activated her wrist communicator again, this time showing a different image. It was Marcus's grandfather, much younger, standing in what looked like a human military academy. He wore a simple uniform and had the same determined expression Marcus saw in the mirror every morning. "This was taken when he was about your age," Sarah said. "He was just a farm boy from rural China who joined the Earth Defense Force because he wanted to see the stars. No one expected him to become legendary." Marcus studied the image, seeing the resemblance but also the differences. His grandfather looked confident but not arrogant, determined but not desperate. "The point is," Sarah continued, "legends aren't born. They're made through hard work, smart choices, and never giving up. Your grandfather became extraordinary because he refused to accept limitations." She closed the display and checked her chronometer. "I have a meeting with the Academy commander in 10 minutes. But before I go, let me give you one piece of advice." "What's that?" "Don't let today change who you are. Yes, you have a famous grandfather, but you're still Marcus Chen. You still have to earn your own respect and find your own path. Use the family legacy as motivation, not a crutch." Sarah hugged him briefly, her embrace feeling like armor against the challenges ahead. "I'll be watching your progress. Make me proud." As she walked away, Marcus remained at the viewport, staring out at the stars. Somewhere among those distant lights was Earth, the world his grandfather had left behind to serve among aliens. The old man had faced the same doubts and challenges Marcus was experiencing now, but he'd succeeded. He'd become legendary. Marcus touched his injured face one more time, then straightened his shoulders and headed back toward the training ground. Veltar would be there, probably dreading their next encounter. The other cadets would be watching, wondering if the human with the famous grandfather was worthy of his bloodline. There was only one way to find out. 3 weeks after Admiral Chen's visit, the academy felt different to Marcus. Not physically. The same metal corridors stretched between the same training halls, and the same mix of alien species filled the classrooms. But something fundamental had shifted in the way others looked at him. The change started small. Zolonian cadets who had previously hissed insults now nodded respectfully when he passed. The Borvac twins, who communicated through shared thoughts, would pause their mental conversations to include him in normal speech. Even the ethereal beings, who rarely acknowledged physical students, seemed to solidify slightly when he approached. But the most dramatic change was in Instructor Veltar. "Again," the Catherian commanded, his voice carrying none of the mockery that had once filled it. Your grandfather's technique requires perfect balance. Feel the weight distribution through your entire body. Marcus adjusted his stance, centering his weight over the balls of his feet as he'd been taught. The combat form he was learning was unlike anything the other cadets had seen. It combined elements of ancient Earth martial arts with adaptation techniques designed for fighting in variable gravity. Better, Veltar observed, circling Marcus with his predatory grace. Your bloodline shows. But bloodline is not enough. Understanding must come from within. This was the new Veltar, demanding but respectful, pushing Marcus harder than ever but without the cruelty. The instructor had spent the days following Admiral Chen's revelation researching everything he could find about General Chen Wei-Lin. What he'd discovered had changed his entire perspective on human potential. Marcus threw a series of strikes at the training dummy, each movement flowing into the next like water. The technique felt natural now, as if his body remembered movements his grandfather had never directly taught him. The dummy's sensors registered the impact points, and a holographic display showed the devastating effect each blow would have had on a living opponent. Excellent, Veltar said, and there was genuine approval in his voice. Your grandfather would recognize those forms. He developed them specifically for combat against larger, stronger opponents. The other cadets training nearby had stopped their own exercises to watch. Marcus tried to ignore their attention, but he could feel their eyes on him. Some watched with admiration, others with envy, and a few with something that might have been fear. Instructor Veltar, one of the Zilonian students, called out. Might we observe the complete sequence? For educational purposes? Veltar's compound eyes shifted to the gathered students, then back to Marcus. If Cadet Chen agrees. The Chen family techniques are not common knowledge. Marcus hesitated. His grandfather's methods were apparently still classified at the highest levels of imperial security. Admiral Sarah had given him access through special dispensation, but sharing them with other students might be inappropriate. Just the basic movements, Marcus said finally. Nothing advanced. The Zilonian nodded eagerly. And soon Marcus found himself at the center of a loose circle of cadets from multiple species. Even some of the instructors had arrived, drawn by rumors of the legendary techniques being demonstrated. The foundation, Marcus began, feeling oddly like his grandfather's voice was speaking through him, is adaptation. Every species fights differently, with different strengths and weaknesses. The Chen method teaches you to read your opponent and adjust accordingly. He moved through the basic forms slowly, explaining each movement's purpose. When facing a larger opponent like a Catherian, the techniques emphasized speed and precision over brute force. Against multiple enemies, they focused on positioning and using opponents' momentum against each other. This is remarkable, whispered a Borvac twin to her sister. The human grandfather thought of everything. One of the watching instructors, a massive Growlock whose species was known for their incredible strength, stepped forward. Cadet Chen, might I offer a demonstration, partner? I am curious about these adaptation principles. Marcus looked to Veltar, who clicked his mandibles in what Marcus had learned was approval. It would be educational, the Catherian agreed. The Growlock was twice Marcus's height and probably 5 times his weight. His rocky skin looked like natural armor, and his 4 massive arms ended in hands that could crush steel. Among his people, he was known as Instructor Thane, and his reputation for devastating combat skills preceded him. Please, Marcus said, bowing slightly in the Earth custom. I would be honored. The circle of cadets expanded to give them room, and Marcus could feel the tension in the air. This was no longer a simple training exercise. It was a test of whether the legendary Chen techniques could work against a truly overwhelming opponent. Thane moved into position with surprising grace for such a large being. His species communicated through subsonic vibrations, and Marcus felt, rather than heard, the Growlock's words of respect before they began. Your grandfather once faced my uncle in exhibition combat, Thane said, his translator making his deep voice audible. Uncle spoke of it until his dying day. He said Chen Wei-Lin fought like water. Impossible to grasp. Impossible to predict. Marcus nodded, settling into the stance his grandfather had taught him years ago on quiet afternoons behind their house. The memory was so clear he could almost smell the jasmine flowers that had bloomed in his grandmother's garden. Thane attacked with controlled aggression, his massive arms sweeping through the space where Marcus had been standing. But the human was already moving, flowing around the strike like his grandfather had taught him. Instead of trying to block or counter the incredible force, Marcus redirected it, using Thane's own momentum to put the Growlock off balance. The watching cadets gasped as the massive instructor stumbled slightly, his weight carried forward by his own attack. Marcus was already in position for a theoretical killing strike, his hand stopping just short of a vulnerable point on Thane's neck. "Remarkable," Thane rumbled, straightening up with obvious respect. "The stories were true. Your grandfather's techniques turned strength into weakness." They continued the demonstration for several more exchanges, each one showing different aspects of the Chen method. Marcus felt more confident with each movement, his grandfather's training flowing through him like inherited memory. But as the crowd of watchers grew, Marcus began to notice something troubling. Not all the faces around him showed admiration or curiosity. Some of the older cadets, particularly those from species with proud warrior traditions, looked resentful. One of them was HFY, a senior Catherian who had been training at the academy for 3 years. Unlike instructor Veltar, whose respect for the Chen legacy was genuine, HFY seemed to view Marcus's sudden prominence as a challenge to his own status. "Impressive theater," HFY said as the demonstration ended, his mandibles clicking with barely controlled aggression. "But can the young human actually fight, or does he only dance?" The training ground fell silent. Challenge speech was a formal tradition among many warrior species, and HFY's words carried weight that couldn't be ignored. Several instructors moved closer, their expressions tense. Marcus felt every eye in the room on him. This was exactly the kind of situation Admiral Sarah had warned him about. Someone using his grandfather's reputation to provoke a confrontation that could go very wrong. "I train like everyone else," Marcus said carefully. "I'm not looking for special treatment." "But you receive it," HFY pressed, his compound eyes glittering. "Private instruction in secret techniques. Respect given for bloodline, rather than merit. Some might call this favoritism." Instructor Veltar stepped forward, his body language radiating warning. "Cadet HFY, you will moderate your tone." "Will I?" HFY's upper arms crossed while his lower arms moved to a ready position. Or perhaps the human can answer for himself. If he truly carries his grandfather's skill, let him prove it. Marcus felt the familiar surge of anger that had gotten him in trouble before. But this time, he also felt something else. A calm certainty that seemed to come from somewhere deeper than his own experience. "If that's what it takes," Marcus said quietly. The watching crowd stirred with excitement and apprehension. Formal challenges between cadets were rare and potentially dangerous. Different species had very different concepts of acceptable force. "This is irregular," Instructor Thane rumbled, his subsonic voice vibrating through the floor. Perhaps cooler thoughts should prevail. Quote, but HFY was already moving to the center of the training area, his chitinous plates shifting with anticipation. "The human accepts, unless he wishes to reconsider and admit his grandfather's reputation means nothing here." That decided it. Marcus walked to face him, his mind automatically shifting into the focused state his grandfather had called water mind. Alert but calm, ready to flow with whatever came. The two cadets circled each other while instructors quickly established a formal perimeter. This was no longer a casual training exercise but an official challenge that would be recorded in both their academy files. HFY was older, more experienced, and significantly larger than Marcus. His species' natural advantages included superior reach, multiple striking limbs, and armor-like skin that could deflect most attacks. By any reasonable calculation, Marcus was about to be thoroughly beaten. "Your grandfather fought weaklings," HFY said as they circled. "Frontier criminals and untrained soldiers. I am a true warrior, bred for combat across generations." Marcus didn't respond. His grandfather had taught him that words before combat were usually fear, disguised as bravado. Instead, he focused on reading HFY's movements, watching for tells that would reveal the alien's preferred attack patterns. The Catherian struck first, his upper arm sweeping in a double hammer blow that would have shattered human bones. But Marcus was already moving, ducking under the strike and flowing toward Zexhi's flank. His counterattack targeted a joint in the alien's chitinous armor, striking with precise force. Zexhi stumbled, more from surprise than actual damage, but his recovery was swift. His lower arms lashed out in a pincer movement designed to trap Marcus between crushing grips. This was where the Chen technique showed its true brilliance. Instead of trying to escape the trap, Marcus moved deeper into it, getting inside Zexhi's reach where the alien's size became a disadvantage. His elbow strike targeted another armor joint, and his follow-up knee attack found a vulnerable point his grandfather had taught him existed on all Catherian anatomy. Zexhi's roar of pain and rage echoed through the training hall. He backpedaled frantically, all four arms swinging wildly to keep Marcus at distance, but the human stayed close, his movements flowing like water around stone, striking precisely and repeatedly at weak points. To the watching crowd, it looked like magic. Marcus seemed to anticipate every attack, moving through Zexhi's defenses as if they weren't there. Each of his strikes was calculated for maximum effect with minimum force, exactly as his grandfather had taught him. Impossible, someone whispered. How does he know where to strike? Instructor Veltar's mandibles clicked with what might have been pride. General Chen studied every Federation species for 15 years. He cataloged weaknesses, attack patterns, and optimal counter-strategies. This knowledge became part of his legacy. The fight ended suddenly. Zexhi, desperate and increasingly frantic, overcommitted to a massive downward strike with all four arms. Marcus stepped aside at the last instant, letting the alien's own force carry him forward into empty air. As Zexhi stumbled past, Marcus applied a submission hold his grandfather had adapted from ancient Earth grappling arts. The Catherian struggles only tightened the hold. Within seconds, he was forced to tap out, gasping his surrender through the translator device. The training hall erupted in shocked conversations across multiple species and languages. Marcus released the hold immediately and stepped back, offering his hand to help Zexhi up. For a moment, the defeated cadet stared at the offered hand as if it might be a trick. Then, slowly, he accepted the help and climbed to his feet. Your grandfather's skills, Zexhi said finally, his voice carrying grudging respect. They are authentic. Kasser. They are Kasser. Kasser. Authentic. Thank you for the match, Marcus replied, bowing slightly. You fought well. It was the proper response according to the traditions his grandfather had taught him, but it clearly surprised the watching aliens. Among many warrior species, victory was meant to be savored, and defeat was shame to be avoided. The human shows honor, Instructor Thane observed, his subsonic approval vibrating through the floor. This is also part of Chen Weilin's legacy. Victory without arrogance, strength without cruelty. As the crowd began to disperse, Marcus noticed several things happening at once. Some of the watching cadets approached him with obvious respect, asking questions about training opportunities and technique demonstrations. Others, particularly those from traditionally dominant species, watched him with expressions that ranged from thoughtful to hostile. Most interesting of all was the reaction of the Academy's senior staff. Several instructors were having an intense conversation in the corner, their body language suggesting they were discussing something significant. Admiral Sarah's warnings about making enemies suddenly felt very real. You have created ripples, Instructor Veltar said quietly as he approached Marcus. Some will spread outward in beneficial ways. Others may return as tsunamis. What do you mean? Veltar's compound eyes reflected the training hall lights as he considered his words. Your grandfather's legend was carefully managed. His service to the Emperor created respect, but it also created questions. Why was a human chosen over established warrior species? What did General Chen possess that others lacked? The instructor's mandibles clicked slowly as he watched the dispersing crowd. For 30 years, those questions remained academic. Your grandfather was retired, living quietly on Earth, but now his descendant has appeared, demonstrating the same capabilities. reminding everyone of what humanity achieved. Marcus felt a chill that had nothing to do with the training hall's environmental systems. "You're saying I've made enemies just by being good at this?" "I am saying," Veltar replied carefully, "that your success validates your grandfather's legacy, and your grandfather's legacy challenges assumptions that many species hold dear about their place in the galaxy's hierarchy." Before Marcus could respond, one of the senior instructors approached them. It was Commander Rix Thule, the Academy's chief tactical instructor and a veteran of multiple campaigns. His species, the Vorth, were known for their strategic thinking and their tendency to hold grudges. "Cadet Chen," Commander Rix Thule said, his translator rendering his words with formal precision. "Your performance today was noteworthy. I believe it merits additional attention." The tone was neutral, but something about the commander's body language set Marcus's instincts on edge. This felt less like recognition and more like scrutiny. "Additional attention, sir? Advanced tactical scenarios," Rix Thule explained. "Small unit leadership exercises. Tests of judgment under pressure. The kind of challenges that separate true officers from mere fighters." Instructor Veltar's chitinous plates rustled slightly, a sign of unease that Marcus had learned to recognize. "Commander, perhaps Cadet Chen should complete his basic training before advancing to leadership scenarios." "On the contrary," Rix Thule replied, his multifaceted eyes never leaving Marcus's face. "If the cadet truly carries his grandfather's abilities, he should welcome the opportunity to prove himself worthy of such legacy." It was smoothly done, Marcus realized. He was being maneuvered into accepting challenges that were probably beyond his current abilities. But refusing would suggest he was hiding behind his family name. "I appreciate the opportunity, sir," Marcus said carefully. "When do these exercises begin?" "Tomorrow," Rix Thule replied with what might have been satisfaction. "You will be team leader for a mixed-species squad in a complex tactical scenario. Success will demonstrate your readiness for advanced training. Failure." The commander let the sentence hang unfinished, but the implication was clear. One way or another, Marcus was about to be tested in ways that normal cadets never faced. As Commander Rix Thule walked away, Instructor Veltar moved closer to Marcus. "You should contact your aunt," he said quietly. "What you face tomorrow is not standard academy procedure." Marcus nodded, his mind already racing through the implications. His demonstration of the Chen family techniques had accomplished more than just earning respect. It had apparently marked him as a target for those who resented his grandfather's legacy. Tomorrow would determine whether he was truly worthy of the name he carried, or just another human who had risen above his station. The weight of 30 years of family reputation settled on his shoulders like armor made of expectations. But as he walked toward his quarters, Marcus found himself thinking about his grandfather's quiet confidence and his aunt's unshakable determination. The Chen family had faced impossible odds before. Tomorrow would prove whether the legacy lived on. The tactical simulation chamber was unlike anything Marcus had experienced during his months at the academy. Where normal training exercises used simple holographic environments, this room contained a full sensory matrix capable of creating completely realistic alien worlds. The air itself could be altered to simulate different atmospheric compositions, and the gravity generators could replicate conditions from any known planet in the Federation. Marcus stood at the center of the briefing area, surrounded by his assigned team. Commander Rix Thule had chosen the squad members personally, and Marcus was beginning to understand that each selection had been calculated to maximize the difficulty of his task. To his left stood Krektar, a young Vorth whose species prized logic and strategic thinking above all else. The reptilian cadet had made no secret of his belief that command positions should go to those with the most advanced analytical capabilities, meaning members of his own species. On his right was Zara Thin, a Zolonian female whose cobra-like hood flared with barely controlled aggression. Her people valued individual prowess and had little patience for collaborative leadership. She'd already questioned Marcus's ability to lead a mixed-species team. Behind them waited Volthak, a Grolok even larger than Instructor Thane, whose species believed that physical dominance should determine command hierarchy. The rocky giant had said nothing since the team assembly, but his contempt was written in every movement. The final member was perhaps the strangest choice of all. an ethereal being called Whisper of Stars who existed partially outside normal reality. Communication with ethereals required special equipment, and their thought processes were so alien that most species found them impossible to work with effectively. An interesting group, Marcus observed, trying to project confidence he didn't feel. Commander Rix Thule has given us quite a challenge. Krektar's scaled head tilted slightly. The commander has assembled a team of specialists with fundamentally incompatible approaches to problem-solving. Perhaps this is intended to test our ability to find common ground. Or perhaps, Zara Thin hissed, her forked tongue tasting the air. It is intended to demonstrate the impossibility of effective mixed-species leadership under pressure. Volthak rumbled something in his native language that the translators rendered as roughly equivalent to "weakness will be exposed." His massive hands clenched and unclenched, as if anticipating combat. Whisper of Stars flickered between states of existence, their form shifting from translucent to nearly solid as they processed information across multiple dimensional planes. When they spoke, their words seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. The patterns suggest confluence and discord in equal measure, the ethereal being observed. Success and failure exist simultaneously in quantum superposition until observed by outcome. Marcus took a deep breath, remembering his grandfather's teachings about leadership. Chen Wei-Lin had commanded diverse units throughout his career, finding ways to unite beings with radically different capabilities and motivations. The scenario parameters will be revealed shortly, Marcus said. Before they are, I want to establish some basic principles. We each have unique strengths, and our effectiveness will come from combining those strengths, rather than competing with each other. Krektar's analytical mind seemed to appreciate this approach, but Zarathin's hood flared wider with skepticism. Volthak continued his silent assessment, while Whisper of Stars phased through several dimensional states. The chamber's systems activated with a low hum, and suddenly they were standing on the surface of an alien world. The sky was a deep purple, crossed by two orange suns that cast everything in strange, shifting shadows. In the distance, towering crystalline formations jutted from the landscape like frozen lightning. Commander Rix Thule's voice echoed from hidden speakers throughout the simulation. Team Leader Chen, your mission parameters are as follows. A Federation diplomatic envoy has crash-landed on the planet Zerion 7. The survivors are trapped in hostile territory controlled by the Ravager clans, a species known for their aggressive territorial behavior and advanced technology. The landscape around them shimmered, revealing additional details. Smoke rose from a crash site approximately 5 kilometers away, barely visible through the alien terrain. Between their position and the crash site, thermal imaging revealed the heat signatures of multiple enemy patrols. Your team must reach the survivors, extract them safely, and bring them to the designated pickup zone, Rix Thule continued. You have limited equipment and no reinforcements. The Ravagers possess superior numbers and intimate knowledge of the terrain. Mission failure will result in the deaths of 12 Federation diplomats. Marcus studied the tactical display that appeared in front of them, showing the enemy positions and patrol patterns. The Ravagers were clearly intelligent fighters, positioning their forces to create overlapping fields of fire while maintaining escape routes for tactical withdrawal. Standard approach would be direct assault, Volthak stated, his rocky fists grinding together. Grolok warriors do not skulk in shadows. Direct assault against superior numbers in unknown terrain is tactically unsound, Krektar observed, his scaled fingers dancing across a datapad as he calculated odds. Probability of success through frontal attack is less than 12%. Zarathin's hood remained flared as she studied the enemy positions. My people would use stealth and poison. Strike from ambush. Eliminate sentries. Create chaos in their ranks. Multiple probability streams exist, Whisper of Stars added, their form shifting between dimensions as they perceived outcomes invisible to the others. Some lead to success, others to failure. The path depends on choices not yet made. Marcus felt the weight of command settling on his shoulders like physical pressure. Each team member was advocating for approaches that reflected their species' natural inclinations. But none of them alone would succeed against these odds. Then he remembered something his grandfather had told him about the Emperor's Guard training. The most effective Imperial units weren't composed of soldiers from a single species, but rather combined different capabilities into something greater than the sum of its parts. "We're going to use all of your approaches," Marcus said, causing every team member to turn toward him in surprise. But not separately. Together. He activated the tactical display's planning mode, highlighting different areas of the battlefield. "Krektar, I need you to analyze the enemy patrol patterns and predict their movements. Find us the optimal timing windows for each phase of the operation." The Vorth's reptilian features showed interest despite himself. Strategic analysis was exactly the kind of complex problem his species excelled at. "Zara Thin, your stealth capabilities will be crucial for reconnaissance and eliminating isolated sentries. But instead of random chaos, we'll use precise strikes to guide the enemy into positions that favor us." The Zalonian's hood relaxed slightly as she realized her abilities would be central to the plan rather than dismissed. "Volthak, we'll need your strength for the actual extraction. The crash survivors may be injured, and you're the only one who can carry multiple casualties across difficult terrain quickly." The massive Grolok nodded slowly, his contempt beginning to shift towards something that might have been approval. "And Whisper of Stars," Marcus continued. "Your ability to perceive multiple probability streams will help us adapt when the plan inevitably encounters unexpected variables." The ethereal being solidified enough to approximate a nod. "Quantum uncertainties become manageable when properly observed." Marcus studied the tactical display one more time, his grandfather's voice seeming to whisper strategy advice in the back of his mind. The Chen family approach wasn't about imposing a single solution, but rather about understanding each element and finding ways to make them work together. "Here's how we do this," he said, and began outlining a plan that incorporated elements from every team member's suggestions while addressing the unique challenges they faced. The operation began with Krektar's analysis phase. The Vorth worked with methodical precision, tracking patrol movements and identifying patterns in the Ravager's defensive strategy. His calculations revealed a brief window every 17 minutes, when 3 key positions would be simultaneously understaffed. "Fascinating," Krektar admitted as he shared his findings. "The enemy commanders are competent, but they follow predictable rotation schedules. This suggests military discipline rather than chaotic raiding behavior." Zarathin used this information to plan her infiltration route, identifying which sentries needed to be eliminated and in what order to avoid raising alarms. Her species' natural camouflage abilities and silent movement made her nearly invisible in the alien landscape. "First target is isolated on that ridge," she reported through the communication system. "Eliminating now." Marcus watched through the tactical display as the Zalonian moved like liquid shadow, reaching her target without being detected. The enemy sentry vanished from the display as Zara Thin applied precision strikes that left no trace of struggle. "Target eliminated," she reported, moving to secondary position. While Zara Thin cleared their path, Volthak prepared for his role in the extraction phase. Despite his species' reputation for straightforward combat, the Grolok had been carefully studying the terrain around the crash site, planning the most efficient route for carrying wounded diplomats. "Rocky ground will provide cover from energy weapons," he observed, his analytical approach surprising the other team members. "Diplomatic personnel, likely wearing standard Federation emergency gear. Total weight manageable, even with multiple casualties." Whisper of Stars provided ongoing assessment of their probability matrix, their unique perception allowing them to detect changes in the tactical situation before they became apparent to normal senses. "Quantum fluctuations indicate patrol route deviation in approximately 4 minutes, the ethereal warned. "Probability of detection increases unless compensatory action taken." Marcus adjusted their timeline based on this warning, demonstrating the kind of adaptive leadership his grandfather had been famous for. Instead of rigidly following the original plan, he modified it to account for changing circumstances. "Zarathin, accelerate to the tertiary position. Krektar, recalculate movement windows based on the new patrol deviation. Volthak, be ready to advance on my signal." The team moved with increasing coordination, each member's abilities complementing the others in ways that created opportunities none of them could have achieved alone. Marcus found himself thinking less like someone trying to prove himself and more like someone focused on mission success. They reached the crash site during the optimal window Krektar had identified. The Federation envoy ship was badly damaged, its hull cracked open like an egg. Inside, they found 11 survivors in various states of injury, along with one casualty that was already beyond help. Medical assessment complete, Zarathin reported, her species' knowledge of anatomy making her effective at triage. 3 critical, 5 serious, 3 ambulatory. The critical cases require immediate evacuation. Volthak moved with surprising gentleness for such a massive being, carefully lifting the injured diplomats in specially designed carries that distributed their weight safely. His strength allowed him to transport multiple casualties simultaneously, something that would have required several smaller beings. Ready for extraction, he rumbled through the communicator. Wounded are secure. But as they prepared to leave, Whisper of Stars flickered through multiple dimensional phases with obvious agitation. Probability matrix has shifted dramatically, the ethereal warned. New variables have entered the equation. Ravager response indicates awareness of our presence. Marcus checked the tactical display and saw their worst fears confirmed. Enemy forces were converging on their position from multiple directions, moving with coordination that suggested someone was directing their response. They know we're here, Marcus said grimly. Krektar. Analysis. How did they detect us? The Vorth's fingers flew across his datapad, processing multiple information streams. Unknown variable in their detection capabilities. Their response pattern suggests technological advantage we did not account for. The situation was deteriorating rapidly. Their carefully planned extraction route was now compromised, and enemy forces were positioning to cut off their escape to the pickup zone. Marcus felt the moment of true command decision approaching, the kind of choice that would determine not just mission success, but the lives of everyone, depending on his leadership. Then he remembered something his grandfather had told him about the Imperial Guard training. When plans fail, the old man had said, don't fight the chaos, use it. Change of plans, Marcus announced. We're not running from them anymore. We're going to make them run from us. The new strategy was audacious to the point of seeming suicidal. Instead of trying to evade the converging enemies, they would attack them directly, but not in the way the Ravagers would expect. Volthak. You and the wounded move to defensible position at grid reference 77 Alpha. Dig in and prepare for siege defense. Zarathin, you're going to create the appearance of a much larger force by hitting multiple enemy positions simultaneously. Make them think they're facing a full assault team. Krektar, I need real-time analysis of enemy response patterns. When they start repositioning to deal with the perceived threat, identify their weak points. Whisper of Stars. Monitor probability streams for optimal timing of Phase 2. The plan relied on psychological warfare rather than direct confrontation. By making the enemies think they were facing a larger force, Marcus hoped to spread their attention across multiple threats, while keeping his own team concentrated on specific objectives. Zarathin moved like a ghost through the alien landscape, striking at enemy positions with precise attacks that suggested the presence of multiple infiltrators. Her natural camouflage and mobility allowed her to appear to be everywhere at once. Krektar tracked the enemy response with analytical precision, identifying exactly how their commanders were reacting to the apparent multi-point assault. Enemy forces fragmenting, he reported. They are dividing strength to address perceived threats across 7 different positions. Probability streams converging on optimal outcome, Whisper of Stars added, their form stabilizing as the quantum uncertainties resolved. Enemy confusion creates opportunity window in approximately 90 seconds. Marcus waited for exactly the right moment, then signaled for Phase 2. Instead of continuing the deception, they would exploit the chaos Zarathin had created to punch through the enemy's weakened perimeter. All units, converge on extraction route, Charlie. Volthak, move the wounded now. Everyone else, full assault on the compromised positions. What followed was a masterpiece of coordinated team tactics. Each member contributed their unique capabilities to create something that was greater than any individual effort could have achieved. Volthak charged through the confusion carrying wounded diplomats, his massive frame shrugging off enemy fire that would have stopped smaller beings. Zarathin struck from multiple angles, her precision attacks eliminating key threats before they could coordinate a response. Krektar provided real-time tactical updates that kept everyone positioned optimally, while Whisper of Stars warned of dangers before they materialized. Marcus coordinated it all, his grandfather's training flowing through him like inherited instinct. He could see the battlefield the way Chen Wei-Lin had taught him, not as chaos, but as patterns that could be read and influenced. They reached the extraction point with minutes to spare, the wounded diplomats secured, and the enemy forces scattered across the landscape in confused pursuit of threats that had already moved on. As the simulation ended and the alien world faded away, Marcus found himself standing in the chamber with 4 teammates who were looking at him with expressions he'd never seen before. That was, Krektar began, then paused as if searching for adequate words. That was strategically elegant. You utilized our capabilities in ways that maximized efficiency while minimizing individual risk. Zarathin's hood was completely relaxed now, her earlier hostility replaced by something approaching respect. You fought like a proper pack leader, each hunter serving the greater hunt. Volthak's massive hand settled on Marcus's shoulder with surprising gentleness. The young human leads with wisdom beyond his size. This is good leadership. Even Whisper of Stars seemed impressed, their form maintaining unusual stability. Quantum probabilities aligned in ways that suggest deep understanding of complexity theory. Most beings cannot perceive such patterns. Commander Rixthul entered the chamber, his expression unreadable. Marcus prepared himself for criticism or analysis of his performance. But what came next was completely unexpected. Cadet Chen, the commander said formally. Your performance today has been recorded for review by the Academy Board. Your tactical innovations and leadership capabilities will be noted in your permanent file. The Vorth commander paused, his multifaceted eyes studying Marcus carefully. I admit that I expected different results. Your grandfather's reputation preceded you. And I wondered if it was deserved, or merely legend, enhanced by time. Marcus waited, uncertain where this was leading. Today you have demonstrated that Chen Wei-Lin's legacy is not historical curiosity, but living capability passed to new generations. Your ability to unite diverse capabilities into effective action is noteworthy. High praise from a species known for their analytical objectivity. But Marcus sensed there was more coming. However, Rixthul continued, your success today will not go unnoticed by those who question humanity's place in Federation leadership. Some will see your performance as evidence that humans pose a threat to established hierarchies. It was the warning Admiral Sarah had given him, now coming from an unexpected source. Success was creating as many challenges as failure would have. I understand, sir, Marcus replied. But I can't hold back just to make others comfortable. My grandfather didn't, and neither will I. Commander Rixthul's expression might have been approval, though it was hard to read alien facial expressions accurately. Good. The galaxy needs leaders who can unite diverse capabilities, rather than impose single solutions. Your grandfather understood this, and it appears you are learning it as well. As the team dispersed, Marcus found himself thinking about the day's events. The tactical exercise had been designed to test his abilities under pressure, but it had become something more, a demonstration that the Chen family approach to leadership wasn't just historical curiosity, but practical methodology that could work in contemporary challenges. More importantly, he discovered that he didn't need to be exactly like his grandfather to honor his legacy. Chen Wei-Lin had found ways to unite diverse beings in service of larger goals. Marcus was learning to do the same thing, but in his own way and with his own understanding. The communication system chimed, indicating an incoming priority message. Marcus activated the display and saw Admiral Sarah's face appear in holographic projection. I've been following your progress through official channels, she said with obvious pride. Your performance today has created quite a stir among the Academy leadership. Well done. Thank you, Aunt Sarah. Though I'm beginning to understand what you meant about making enemies. Success always creates challenges, she replied. But it also creates opportunities. The Federation needs leaders who can work effectively with multiple species. And you've proven that humans can excel in that role. She paused, her expression becoming more serious. I've also received some interesting communications from the Imperial Palace. It seems word of your capabilities has reached certain influential circles. Marcus felt a chill of anticipation mixed with apprehension. What kind of communications? The kind that suggest your grandfather's legacy continues to resonate in the highest levels of government. But that's a conversation for another time. The transmission ended, leaving Marcus alone with his thoughts in the quiet academy corridor. Around him, cadets from dozens of species moved between training sessions and classes, each pursuing their own path toward military service. But for the first time since arriving at the academy, Marcus felt like he truly belonged among them. Not because of who his grandfather had been, but because of who he was becoming. The Chen family legacy wasn't a burden to carry, but a foundation to build upon. As he walked toward his quarters, Marcus passed Instructor Veltar in the corridor. The Catherian stopped, his compound eyes reflecting the corridor lighting as he studied the young human. Your grandfather would be proud, Veltar said simply. I hope so, Marcus replied. I'm still learning, as was he, until the day he died. That is what made Chen Weilin legendary. Not that he knew everything, but that he never stopped growing. The instructor continued on his way, leaving Marcus with words that carried the weight of hard-earned wisdom. The galaxy was vast and full of challenges that would test everything he'd learned and everything he would learn. But the Chen family legacy would continue, not as a repetition of past achievements, but as an ongoing commitment to unity, growth, and the simple but profound belief that diverse beings could accomplish more together than any of them could achieve alone. Marcus smiled as he reached his quarters, already thinking about tomorrow's training sessions and the new challenges they would bring. The stars beyond the Academy's viewports held infinite possibilities, and he was ready to meet them with everything his grandfather had taught him and everything he was still learning. The legend lived on, not in the past, but in the future, being written one choice at a time.